Hello, everybody. Welcome in. It is.
Front Office Friday.
Let's go. It's Friday, and that means it is Front Office Friday. We're coming to you live to take your questions and comments about the crazy world of the NBA. Lots of stuff to dive into. Obviously, the playoffs in full swing. The Phoenix Suns bounced out. What does this mean for their future? Plenty of stuff to talk about today. Keith, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It was a crazy game last night for the Celtics. They came back, pulled it out, and they're still alive and hanging in there. So we'll see how Game 7 goes. Anytime you get a Game 7, it's great. We got a couple more games tonight. Unfortunately, the Nuggets finished off the Suns, so that's one less game we could have got. But we'll take it. I'm fine with the Nuggets, and congrats to them for moving on. But yeah, it's Friday, man. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, let's do this. And I guess let's start there. Let's start with the Phoenix Suns. There's been already a lot of chatter about them potentially moving on from Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton. We know that was always kind of a rocky marriage to begin with. How different is this Suns roster going to look next season?
Yeah, we're hearing a lot of stuff about how they may look to move Chris Paul. Maybe Monty Williams could be out as the head coach. There was even suggestions out there today of maybe they just straight up waive Chris Paul. I tend to think that's a little unlikely because it's not like that's going to create enough flexibility for you to really replace him in any meaningful way. We know DeAndre Ayton may not be a big part of things moving forward. That seemed like a kind of reluctant matching of that contract anyway from the Suns. So I think there's a chance they reset that roster in a major way around Kevin Durant and Devin Booker going into next season.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me if we see some big changes. Phoenix is a team too that I've been looking at thinking this wasn't really the year for them in terms of the depth. This coming summer with Kevin Durant, with Devin Booker, I think they're going to be one of those landing spots for that free agent that's better than a minimum contract, but the money has dried up. And so they wind up joining on with the team for 1 year, that kind of veteran ring chaser type. The Suns are going to be a landing spot for those kind of guys. So I would imagine that their depth is going to look better next year, but it'll be interesting to see how different their starting five looks. If Chris Paul is indeed on the way out, they got to get another point guard. Do they move on from DeAndre Ayton? What do they do at the center position there? I've seen a lot of Suns fans saying, let's get rid of Ayton and just get another wing, try to get a decent quality wing player, and then find a run-of-the-mill center. That would be the preference in terms of the roster build. Will be interesting to see what they do on both those fronts.
Yeah, for sure. And that is a thought out there. Centers are kind of like running backs in the NFL where, there's a belief of you don't necessarily need to pay for one. But then you look at some of the teams that are left and moving on in the playoffs. And for purposes of this discussion, I'm going to call Anthony Davis a center because that's what he's played all year.
He plays center almost every minute he's on the floor right now.
So it's, Davis, Jokic, Embiid, like they're all still going. So, it's there is something to be said for having a pretty good one. The problem is there's only so many pretty good centers, right? So then it's kind of like, all right, if I can't get one of them, kind of again like running backs, if you can't get one of the best ones, then you're probably fine to just cycle through a couple different options and get different kind of guys, right? Like maybe one's a little more defensive minded, one's maybe can stretch the floor or score a little bit, and you just kind of go that way. So yeah, I think I definitely think major roster change coming, and they've got a lot of different ways they can go, right? Because that's part of the benefit of Chris Paul's contract. It's $30.8 million, but it's only $15.8 million guaranteed. So you could potentially guarantee more of it if you needed to put him into a trade and things like that. So that's going to be something interesting to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah. I think there is going to be a lot going on in Phoenix this coming summer. What about Monty? Should this year's performance be enough to move on from him?
Yeah, it's really tough because I think what you're kind of looking at there is, does it become just a accumulation of, we made the finals a couple years ago and they were up in those finals. I think we've all collectively forgotten potentially that they were up and then fell from ahead. And, so then it becomes, where are you going, from there? So I think, it becomes just kind of a situation of with Monty Williams of, I think you got to be looking at it and saying, all right, is he the right guy to get us over the top? And if he isn't, who is, right? And who becomes available that you think is the right guy to kind of take you over the top? That's got to be also another factor in your discussion point as well.
It's a little bit of a Mike Budenholzer effect then. right?
A
In
little
terms of,
bit.
hey, this
Yeah.
guy's a good coach. Is he good enough to get us to the promised land? Obviously, Budenholzer did, but I don't think the Bucks bought in and felt like that was, hey, because we've got a top-notch coach here that we won this championship. So
Yeah.
similar idea here between and I don't know if they're going to move on from him or not, but we'll see. We'll see what ultimately happens there. I've got one person in the chat who said they're coming in at 2 a.m. in Tokyo.
All right.
Welcome
Hey,
in.
thanks, man.
Welcome
Staying
in.
up late.
Yeah, right. Wanted to support the front office show.
Yeah. It's gonna be
But,
what, Saturday morning there. So hopefully you're off work and you're
yeah.
wrapping up a fun Friday night with us. So I'll take it.
Coop says, can't wait for Lakers Celtics 2023 finals. Well, that would be certainly crazy. I know the NBA would certainly enjoy that. Um, that may be the highest rate. Like if you were the NBA and you were to predict like what series would have the highest ratings,
Oh, 100%.
like Lakers Celtics would be it.
Yeah. Yeah. Lakers Celtics almost with anybody would be way up there just because of the history. But then you talk the star power on both sides, the fact that they're tied in championships. You
Yeah.
have that whole factor going in. Yeah, 100%. That's got to be the one that they'd like to see most.
I was talking about this the other day. Somebody brought up the possibility of a Lakers Celtics finals. And I said, look, there's no question that I was rooting against the Celtics, against the 76ers, which is, of course, right? Like
Sure.
that's how it goes. But I said the one thing that would be kind of cool is if the Lakers and Celtics got into the finals, would be like we're in such a what have you done for me lately generation that when I bring up the Lakers Celtics rivalry, I get a decent amount of people saying, what do you mean it's a rivalry? They haven't played each
That's
other in
great.
over a decade in the finals.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, oh, that's not really a thing. We don't care. Like I've had people say we don't care about that anymore. Now
Yeah.
that's mostly the younger fans. But yeah, like if you are, let's say you are, I don't know, 22 right now, you might not remember the last time the Lakers and Celtics played in the finals, at least not that well. So that would be kind of cool to reignite that rivalry and maybe expose a different generation to it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, there are same thing. There are Celtics fans who are, if you ask a certain generation of Celtics fans, you're going to get Sixers or Heat as their main rivals. I think, anybody close to our age is going to say it's the Lakers, right? And I think the correct answer is still it's the Lakers. Then there's a good amount of space. Then it's the Sixers. Then a little bit of space. Then probably the Heat, just because of the recent battles that they've been through. And then it's everybody else, and they keep trying to make Celtics Knicks a rivalry. It never really has been because they've just never been good at the same times where they've had those playoff battles or anything like that. And that's what it really takes, right? It takes playoff battles for a rival to really take hold. So, yeah, it is interesting for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt about the Lakers and the Warriors for years now. It's been, well, they were never good at the same time. So there was never really much of a rivalry there to be had. Although I will say that it has brought out the absolute worst in basketball Twitter, the Lakers and the Warriors playing each other. That's been rough, certainly. So Golden Eagle said, if I were the Phoenix Suns, I'd trade Ayton to the Jazz for Markkanen and Sexton. Your thoughts? I would not do that if I'm Utah.
Yeah, Utah wouldn't do that. Markkanen's the best player in that deal by leaps and bounds, and the Suns don't have enough else to put into that trade to make up that difference. So no chance that the Jazz do that.
Yeah, I mean the Suns would love it.
Yeah, be all over it. Yeah.
Kyle Hampton said, "Is home court really a thing? You think? I've heard it's about crowd noise, but you think that would just be white noise in the focus of the battle? Am I crazy? Do players actually hear that? Does home court matter? I mean, the betting lines say yes. Home court 100% matters. I think when you look at the splits, home court does matter. I think it's both a crowd noise thing and just having that kind of energy in the building behind you, but it's also hey, I got to sleep in my own bed. I didn't have to get on a plane and go sleep in a hotel room and all that sort of like that. I think is a factor as well.
Yeah, you also have, I think, for the game's very best players, they block it out. I've talked about it countless times on this show, but when LeBron was with the Heat, kind of the last run of the Celtics, and they were up for going into game 6 at home with a chance to close out the Heat, and LeBron just played completely like emotionless basketball in a good way, where he just never broke a sweat, never smiled, and just destroyed the Celtics. I'm guessing he didn't hear a word that the crowd had to say at those times. And I think there's two sounds basketball players love more than anything. Well, I'm going to say three. They love being booed on the road. Larry Bird's famous quote was, and your fans will always cheer you at home. But if you're getting booed on the road, it's because you've done something, right? Because
Yep.
you've gotten to them some way or another, and they don't like you. The other thing they love is silence when you're the road team. It means you've silenced the home crowd, followed by boos for the home team, right? Like that's the other thing that you love hearing if you're the visitor. So I think it does matter. I think there's a reason role players tend not to play as well in
Yep.
road games too, because I think they may struggle with the noise. That said, I think there's only a handful of places where home court advantage really matters, and I think a lot more places it's just a lot more even. But to your point, it's the lack of travel. You're in your comfort, you're in your own environment, and those kind of things. Those things do add up no matter what.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's not an insurmountable thing or anything. Like we see it in soccer, where strategically the road team plays a different style of soccer than when they're at home. You don't see that much in the NBA. You don't see a team say, "Well, we're the road team, so we're going to play this way." Like soccer it is a big thing. The NBA, it's still a thing, but it's not like you're necessarily changing up your style of play just because you're on the road instead of at home.
Yeah, I completely agree. Somebody asked, why do you guys think home ice in hockey means way less than basketball? I don't know enough about hockey, but I
Yeah.
know the one thing I do know, because I see people who do know hockey say is it's so much about the goalie in hockey. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
it's the same thing in baseball. It's about that day's starting pitcher, that can kind of keep everything locked in and shut everything down. So that's I think the difference in those sports, because it's one player can have such a major impact on a game, where that's not that one player can't in the NBA, but it's just a different kind of thing.
Infinite 18 with the super chat, no question, but thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it. Jeremy said, folks need to stop dismissing Denver as a contender. They're legit and will be favored against either the Lakers or the Warriors. If I'm a Denver fan, I want people to keep dismissing them because then they're
Sure.
going to play with that chip on their shoulder and it's us against the world. Nobody believes in us, that type of thing. But yeah, absolutely. I think the Nuggets should be the favorites to come out of the West right now. Like there's whether it's the Warriors, whether it's the Lakers, I would think Denver should be the favorite. They were the one seed for a reason, and they're very good at basketball. I mean, right?
Yeah, they kind of have everything you need, right? They've got the star player in Jokic. You've got the scorers in Murray and Porter. You've got the defenders in guys like Gordon and Caldwell Pope and Bruce Brown that can all kind of lock in. Caldwell Pope and Bruce Brown. And I know some people have been like, well, Booker and Durant scored a ton. Yeah, because they're Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. They're two of the better players in the entire league. But those guys did shore up the weaknesses that Denver's had in previous playoff runs where they are so good. The way they can play. So yeah, I think it is one of those things where I get what Jeremy's saying here, that folks need to stop dismissing Denver. But yeah, I think the Nuggets are perfectly fine if they keep overlooking us, keep writing us off. But I think you might be right. Hey, I think they will be favored, and I think there's a chance they may get through. I think no matter who it is, Lakers or Warriors, that's going to be a battle. That should be a
Absolutely.
really, really fun Western Conference series.
Squid, do you think expansion happens in 3 to 5 years? We've talked about this a lot. Yes, I think it does happen in 3 to 5 years, and I think we're
Announced
looking at
in
Vegas
3
and
to 5
Seattle.
years. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I don't know that necessarily we have new teams. Maybe in 5 years we have new teams, but yeah, I think announced within that range. Yeah. And I'm with you. I think it's going to be Las Vegas and Seattle. At least, we're already hearing the NHL may go up to 34 teams. Maybe the
Mhm.
NBA says, and they've done this in the past where they've brought in 4 teams at once. They did it with the Timberwolves, Magic, original Hornets, and Heat. So
Yeah.
now they staggered them. They brought in 2 1 year and 2 the year after. But I think it is, I think there is a chance, maybe they go to more. But I think for certain they're definitely going to go,
Man.
with two teams in Las Vegas and Seattle seem to be the front runners.
Could you imagine 4 teams at once? That'd be crazy.
Yeah,
That'd be crazy. That would change so much.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of announce, did you see the way the Tennessee Titans announced their schedule this
Loved it.
season?
It was so
That was
great.
fantastic.
So good.
That was fantastic.
Yeah.
If you guys haven't seen that, go check it out. Go find the Tennessee Titans on Twitter. And you see the Colts changed their Twitter handle to not the
Yes.
Cowboys. That's
Did you
so
see
great.
the Falcons changed it to Red Stallions?
That's awesome.
That girl was so And she was like, I know this one. That's the Red Stallions.
She really thought that was it. That was it.
Yeah, I guess. So yeah.
I think that
Yeah,
that needs to be
that was
like a fantasy team name or something
so
now.
good. Right. Oh, I'm sure it will be.
Yeah.
I'm sure it will be. So
All right. Justin Kirkland said, when the Super Tax kicks in this offseason, who are your most interesting teams to watch? Doesn't have to be related to the Super Tax, but I think we'll add a unique element. Also, Lakers Celtics finals with Lake Show getting 18. So he's leaning that direction there. But
I feel like Justin asked this first part just to
put the second part in. The first team that pops into my head, Keith, it's the Bucks. When I look at all the decisions they have to make and how the Super Tax may come into play, when we look at Chris Middleton, we look at Brooke Lopez. That's the first, and I know there's a lot of others, but that's the first team that comes to mind when I think Super Tax and what teams might have to make some tough choices.
Yeah, I think we all know the Warriors and Clippers are there for sure, but I think the Clippers, they don't have a ton of roster stuff to do this summer. They've got some kind of mid rotation guys to work out, and I think they'll just probably retain them and just keep spending. And then the Warriors, it's kind of about Draymond Green and the rest of their group's locked up. But the Bucks, you're absolutely right. They become kind of the first litmus test of they have major roster decisions to make right now. Chris Middleton, Brooke Lopez, Jay Crowder, a whole host of their role players are up, and it's like, all right, do they sacrifice one of those guys in order to? Or we've got to have flexibility to keep making trades and add players around. It is important to know only some of the super tax things come into play this year. Some of them won't come into until future years, but we're in a position here where the super tax, is going to be a thing where it's going to start making major decisions for some of these teams. And I think other teams to keep an eye on, the Atlanta Hawks. They've got some decisions to make here this year and next. You may see some teams start to make some trades to start to kind of get ahead of the process and to maybe rebalance. You may see even a team like I was thinking about this with the Memphis Grizzlies the other day. They could do something right now to take advantage before they get too expensive, to say, hey, let's really try to get something where we can really try to push and add talent here. So it's going to take probably about a 3 to 4 year full window to see all these things really shake out and see how teams are approaching it. But there's definitely teams that are going to have major decisions, including, like you said, the Bucks right off the jump.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how teams navigate this. And then, the teams that were targeted with it, primarily the Clippers and the Warriors, of course, what they do. I had a question came in earlier. Is there any way the Clippers can give Russell Westbrook more than the veteran minimum? No,
because one of the things that does start with this year is if you're over that second tax apron, or please, as we are calling it, the super tax. If you're a super tax team, you have no exception to offer. It goes away entirely. And that does start right away this summer. And that's where the Clippers are going to be. So it's really the veteran minimum, unless they make it. And I should be careful. I shouldn't ever say no and never and those kind of things, because they could make other roster moves where what they do is they kind of go into a spot where, all right, they move I'm making up a Nick Batum contract or something, or Eric Gordon's deal, and they kind of come under, and now they get into a position where it is, all right, we're okay now to do something slightly different. The number for the first and second tax apron, I just saw that come in from Robert Gonzalez since we're there. These are a little bit of projections because we don't have the final numbers, but projected tax, so just the tax line, 162 million. Tax apron, 169 million, and then the super tax, as we're calling it, 179.5 million. So the first tax apron about 7 million above, and then the super tax about 17.5 million above the regular tax, about 10.5 million wiggle room in between there. So that's what that
169 million would also act as the hard cap for teams that do Correct. Like accept a player via sign and trade, to do the usual triggers for a hard cap.
Justin says he added that last little part for me, so I appreciate that, Justin. Thanks, man.
just for you. Just for you. This is an interesting question here. I feel like the CBA will put so much downward pressure on spending. Do you think this CBA will prevent the NBA from having dynasties in the future? I mean, that is part of the goal, is to stop any team from just spending.
Yeah.
I don't know, because everybody's in the same boat, right? If you happen to get enough players that are on cheap contracts, you could still potentially have a dynasty, but at some point you'll have to pay those players. That's the issue. I think it makes dynasties less likely, right?
Mhm.
Certainly makes it less likely because teams will probably have to be broken up that wouldn't have been otherwise.
Yeah, it makes what they did with this in lieu of a true hard cap, because they were never going to do that with a hard cap, because the players were never going to agree to that. What ended up happening is they kind of split the difference on it, where they don't want the Clippers type of teams, or what the Nets had been becoming before they kind of broke everything up this year, where it is you built these super expensive teams from the outside. But what they wanted to do was, if you're the Golden State Warriors, and I know right now a lot of people, especially a chunk of our audience as Laker fans, feel maybe a certain way about the Warriors, and that's fine. I fully respect that. But you can't knock that they have drafted and developed the
Sure.
absolute bulk of that roster. And really, that's how you build. Well, they're not saying you can't keep that together if you do that, right? It's like I'm going to use the Grizzlies again as an example. If the Grizzlies with their current core kind of really push forward because they built all those guys and they become the next super duper expensive team, they're not stopping you from retaining your own players, and you can be as expensive as you want. But what they are saying is you can't be the Warriors and you have Curry and Green and Thompson, and you made the Wiggins trade, and you've got Kaminga and Moody, and then you also went out and added Dante DiVincenzo. That's not what they're going to allow anymore, right?
Right.
That's where they're basically saying no more of adding one more guy on top, right? Where we're basically cutting it off and saying you've got your own draft picks and minimums. I think one of the big things we may see change with this, especially for those expensive teams, they're going to be far less likely to trade picks in the future, because you're going to need those to replenish the talent on your roster, just because you have no other way to really kind of
Yeah.
grab outside talent. That's going to be your biggest way.
Yeah, that's interesting. Picks maybe and that's going to be part of this too, right? Picks perhaps become more valuable. Teams are going to adjust to these new rules, and it's going to be really interesting to see the market kind of react in real time. Like, what happens to the value of picks versus a player that's under contract for X amount? What is, there's all kinds of things that we're going to have to see because valuations are going to shift. I mean, look, just a few years ago, the idea of trading like 5 first-round picks for somebody was
Yeah.
insane, right?
Yep.
And maybe you could say it was still insane. Like, you don't trade that for Rudy Gobert, but nonetheless, with that, the market kind of shifted, and now maybe we'll see another shift where suddenly teams are saying, "Well, no, I don't want to give up a future first-round pick because this is what we're
Yep.
going to need in order to build out a roster. We need these cost-controlled contracts."
Yep, absolutely. I think there's a couple questions in the chat of Bruce Barnes asked if you happen to sign 15. Okay, he corrected. If you draft
Draft.
15 All Stars, yeah, you actually can now. You could sign them all to max deals. It used to be limited, right? You could get to max deals, but like the super max used to be limited to just 2. You're no longer limited to that, which is a good thing. There were teams that were had trade options kind of shut down. But yeah, I'm very curious to, nobody's ever going to get quite that far. But yeah, if is this going to cause teams to break up sooner? We're going to find out. Especially my worry is, right, they don't want it turning into the Premier League. We have 5 or 6 teams that can outspend everybody, and even though the parameters are supposed to be fair for everyone, that they can really go nuts with these guys. So I think what happens is I'm more worried about kind of what happened to the Thunder in a sense, where it was, right, they traded James Harden because it was, well, we don't know if we can pay Durant
Yeah.
and Westbrook and Harden and still have a good enough roster around those guys. So I think what happens in this situation is, do we run into another one of those again? Again, I'm going to use the Grizzlies, but we could use OKC as an example here. New Orleans, if they finally get it together and start figuring it out. Could we see one of those mid-market teams really kind of break up earlier than what they want, because it is harder for them to retain all the guys and, trip into being a super tax team and those kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, we'll see how all of that, of course, plays out, but man, it's going to change things. And there may be some unintended consequences as well. And we'll see kind of how that all looks as it develops. This is interesting. Michael said, I was never on the trade Jaylen Brown train, but the only legitimate trade would be Brown for Lillard. Does that make sense? Is that something you think that the Celtics should be interested in if they do ultimately move on from Jaylen Brown? And I think we've said it's more likely they keep him now that he made second team All NBA and you can get him that Supermax. But would that make sense for Boston?
Yeah, I mean, a lot depends on what happens here in Game 7 and then in the ensuing series that they play. If they go back to the finals, you probably say, "Nah, we're good. We'll keep Brown and we'll keep things moving forward." With that, if they falter in Game 7, then maybe I do think they will have changes. I don't know that it's going to be Jaylen Brown, but I do think they will change some members of the core and look to go slightly different direction because they'll look at it as, hey, we probably should have made it through to the finals again at the very least, and we didn't. Right, we fell short of that goal, and what do you do differently going into next year? But I think the challenge with Lillard is he's older. He's been a little injury prone the last couple of years, and I know some of that is they have shut those guys down in years. So we'll see, with that, there. So yeah, I think it's it's a spot, from that. So I don't know, man. I think we'll see. But I tend to think that's probably not the direction that they'll go.
I agree. I would be, and I don't think Portland is even now ready to make that move. I think Lillard would have to go to Portland and say, "Hey,
Correct.
okay, let's move on. Let's do something else. That has to happen." Yep. Golden Eagle said, "So if you're over the super tax, the only thing you can do is sign veteran minimums with no mid-level exception. Is that correct?" Yes. There's also trade restrictions too, where you can't take back more money than you send out in a trade period. So you have to send back less money, or take back less money in the trade. So there's that part of it too. So it makes it more difficult to add pieces on the market because you don't have a taxpayer mid-level anymore. It also makes it more difficult to add pieces on the trade market because the salary matching becomes that much more restrictive.
Correct. And you can always sign your own draft picks, but yes, you're in a spot where you're very limited in how you would add any kind of outside talent.
Keith, did you see this? This question says, "What do you think of Colin Cowherds' trade idea? Poole and Wiggins for Brown and Brogdon. I really think the Warriors should try Porzingis instead." I thought that was when I heard Colin Cowherd say that, I went, he didn't say Brogdon at first. It was just Poole and Wiggins for Brown. And at that, I was going, no, I wouldn't do that. And then he threw Brogdon into the mix, and I went, oh my gosh,
that just makes it
awful.
Worse.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I wouldn't do. Yeah. No, I would not do that. That's kind of crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. No. As far as Porzingis goes,
sorry, there was a question. Can pay the 17th first round. Is pick 17 the Lakers pick?
Yes.
This year. So I don't know if you can see it.
I'll find
it. The question was, how much can the Lakers pay the 17th pick in the first round? First round picks are on the rookie scale, so that's already locked in. With that, so they don't need to give any kind that whole thing we pick on Rob Plinka about all the time with the we're now calling it the plinka rule, right, with the second round pick signing exception. That's for second round picks or for undrafted players. It's not a first round picks are locked in on a scale amount, so they'll give him a 4-year deal. Should they choose to keep the pick, he'll get a 4-year preset amount, likely for 120% of the scale amount, because that's almost what everybody single player signs for, and that's what he'll get. So they don't need to use any kind of exceptions to. It's technically a rookie exception to sign him, but they don't need to dip in any of their taxpayer mid-level or anything like that. And nobody needs to do that anymore because now we have the Plinka rule that has a second round pick exception to sign second round picks to longer contracts. So, no more problems with that for the Lakers for now.
Yep. As long as they go ahead and actually do it.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Well, that's true. Yes, that's true. Now, if they don't, that's a whole. Now we're in whole other problems.
Right. Right. Joseph said, evident from Game 5, refs swayed by Kerr's flopping comments. Hard to believe at the NBA level. How can the league do better to not let the ref quality sway games? Keith, I obviously watched that game through purple and gold lenses, and that's always going to be the perspective I look at. I was pretty aghast at how horrific the officiating was for Game 5, but also expected it going in. Part of that can be a home court thing, but you kind of knew the Warriors were going to get a great whistle for Game 5. I don't know how much of it was Kerr's comments. Maybe that had something to do with it, but it was pretty obvious from my perspective.
I think I'm not going to completely disagree because I think there were some calls where it's like, oh, that was probably just let that go. I also thought the Lakers played really poorly.
They did.
Especially to start the game.
That was the bigger factor, I think. The
Yeah, I
Lakers
thought
played
they were
poorly.
slow in their rotations. I thought there was a lot of reaching instead of moving their feet, and I don't know what the reason was. Right? Obviously, I really don't know. Why they came out so poor. I mean, it felt like I know the game got tighter as it went, but it really felt they kind of lost that game in the first like 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, like they started as though they were just kind of looking ahead to Game 6.
Yeah, it was like they were up 3-0, right? Like
Yeah.
that was the feel that it had. It's like 3-0, if they lose, we'll go home and close it out. But yeah, I think we've now hit the point in that playoff series. Every playoff series gets there. Boston is Philly, and Philly is now starting to tip there where everybody starts complaining about the refs. And every time then there's a call that's made, it's because they went and cried to the referees. And it's one of the things like Al Horford last night had a play. He literally came across Joel Embiid's arms and karate chopped him. And he's like, but I got the ball. And it's like, yeah. And then you karate chopped
and
across
his arms.
forearms. Like it was clearly a foul and he lost his mind. Then Harden came down and Horford stripped him clean. And Harden did one of his whole, I'm going to fall all over the floor. And they, and they challenged it and it was overruled and he lost his mind about it. So, yeah, I think it's one of those things where this is just, it's the old, Phil Jackson was the master of it, right? And this is not a Lakers thing because he did it long before the Lakers with the Bulls, where it was just, we're gonna kind of put it out there and and see if anybody picks up on it and goes. So that's just the point where we've hit in it. And you know what? If both sides are complaining about it, which they are, then it probably means it's slightly more balanced. But yeah, I just think the team that's more aggressive tends to get the calls, right? And if you play the right way, you're going to kind of get rewarded with it a little bit. If you're playing a lot of clutch and grab and those kind of things, we'll see. So we'll find out.
Yeah, we'll see what Game 6 looks like tonight. Ollie, if Lakers advance, Lakers in 6, what do you think? I think they could
Lakers
advance if they win Game 6.
Nuggets?
Oh, is that what we're talking about the next round?
I think so. I think it's got to be
of the Nuggets.
Right? I would say that's if they win, it's Lakers in 6.
It would be in 6, yeah.
Yeah, Game 7 in Denver would be, and I believe if I remember right from seeing the schedules, it is every other day in both the East and the West. So it's Lakers to Denver's not, or Los Angeles to Denver's not the most harsh travel in the world. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not ready to pick that yet. I gotta wait and let's see what the matchup actually is. But I think that would be the way it means.
All right. And I'm in agreement with that. Let's see. What do we have? I had one and I just missed it. Where did it go? Oh, Robert said, do you guys like the new CBA Super Tax rules? Personally, I don't because it makes it harder for contenders to get better, which I guess is the point of the rules. Yeah, I mean, the NBA would love like the NFL where they have quite a bit of parity. You have teams that rebuild, you have teams that are contending, that are going for it. You do have a cycle of a team, but like you could have a team that's terrible one year and next year suddenly they've got a great defense and they're finding themselves deep in a playoff run and all of that. I think the NBA would love that. What they don't want is like the Kings where they spent almost 2 decades outside the playoffs. And then if you're a Kings fan, that's tough, right? You never get that playoff experience to get behind. So I think they would prefer more parity in general, but that's been a thing for 20 years that we've been talking about the NBA and trying to get more parity in it and all of that.
I think too, what's gone very underreported in these things is that they have made hitting the salary floor generally not a huge issue, but far more like you must do it because if you're not at the salary floor, by the time the season itself starts, you're not going to have benefits as far as trades and all that. It's not like you're going to be able to go in with 50 million in leftover cap space and be 30 million under the floor and feel like, all right, we can now make all these moves. They're basically resetting you as if you are at the floor. So they've made that challenge too. So I think what they're trying to do is cause the really expensive teams to spend less, the less expensive teams, they've given them all the tools in the world to spend more. And I think they're just trying to push everybody more towards the middle. And to
Yep.
your point, yeah, they'd love it to be like the NFL where we come in and at the advent of the play-in tournament, we come in and say, man, there's 30 teams in this league. 20 of them we know make some form of the postseason, right? With the advent of the play-in tournament. And out of the 30 teams, 26 feel like they could really make the postseason. I think this year is kind of a good bar for what the NBA would really like to see,
Oh yeah.
where you only had a couple teams that were really bad. And even those teams, Houston, Detroit, Houston, San Antonio were designed to be bad teams right from the jump because they were so young. But they didn't even really start full on tanking until till we got deep into the season. Detroit was trying to be good. Their stated goal was try to be good. And then they had a ton of injuries that sunk them, and then they started just kind of playing it out. And then Charlotte, they were again trying to be good, and they had a ton of injuries that just kind of forced everything to fall apart on them. So I think that they're in a position where they've got to just kind of it's fine. You're always going to have a couple teams that are going to go that way, but for the most part, yeah, let's have 26 teams in the mix until we get to March and April, because that's really good for the league.
Yeah, I think this year's Western Conference was the ideal scenario for the NBA.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, look at how many teams in the West outside of Houston and San Antonio, their fans were living and dying with every game with like 3 weeks, 2 weeks to play in the season. And then you had, like Portland started to drop out, then Utah started to drop out. But for a while there, I mean, it was every day the standings in the West were shifting drastically. Right? Teams were flying. You win 2 games and you go flying up. And next thing you know, you're a playoff team and not even a play-in team. You lose 1 game and oh my God, we're not even in the play-in anymore, right? It was madness in the Western Conference. And that's fantastic for the NBA to keep fans engaged in that way.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a million times, is have a good week and you're the 5th seed. You have a bad week and you're the 12th seed. And that's just where it is. Mario Hernandez, just because it's related, says, if you're a team that is really good at scouting, the super tax won't affect you as much. Maybe. There's definitely something to that. Like the teams that can either scout for their own picks or pick off bargain players, where it is like we got them on the cheap, whether through trade or through a minimum signing. Yeah, those teams are going to be at an advantage for sure. A team like the Miami Heat, who's generally more often than not a very expensive team, but also does a great job filling out the end of their rosters with guys like Gabe Vincent, Max Strus. Now he's overpaid with Duncan Robinson, right? Like you land all those guys, and that's how you kind of keep things plugging along. So yeah, it kind of becomes almost a stars and scrubs approach a little bit, but you got to be able to pull off that. If people don't know what stars and scrubs means, that is a fantasy term in an auction where you pay a lot of your auction budget for a handful of star players, and then you use $1 and $2 players to round out your roster because you feel like I can find bargains for $1 and $2 players. They call it stars and scrubs. In terms of professional sports, but you got to be able to hit on those scrub signings, right, where they're making a minimum, and that's a tough game. It's hard to fully lock that in with that.
Ali said, should the Lakers go 3-guard starting lineup today? I don't see them. They've resisted changing their starting lineup. I think Darvin Ham will just adjust minutes as far as the rotation goes. They haven't changed the starting 5 up to this point. They left Vanderbilt in there. Maybe they do. I can make an argument for why they would, just based on what we've seen historically. I think they just stick with it and maybe shift the minutes more towards the guards if they feel like that's the path for success there. Ricondo said, Keith makes it so obvious he's a Celtics fan compared to how Trevor talks more equally. LOL. See, I don't agree with that at all. Like, Keith, when we're doing these shows, I always feel kind of bad in a way because whenever I go to reference something, whenever I say, oh yeah, that situation is like this, and I'm trying to make a comparison, my comparison, like 90% of the time, it goes back to Lakers because that's my frame of reference for so much. And I'm like, but this show isn't all about the Lakers. It isn't all about the
No,
Celtics. We're talking the entire NBA.
yeah.
So when I'm on here, I feel like I talk too much Lakers because I keep just natural. That's like my default setting. I keep going back to that. So that's funny that this comment is saying that, because I feel like if anything, it's the opposite.
Also, if you lean back slightly, I think you're in a Lakers hat and a Lakers shirt.
I
So
am
I
indeed.
think we're
I'm trying to build up as much good karma as I can get,
and I get it,
because we
man.
are all incredibly nervous
Listen,
for today.
yeah, I have no issue with it. I don't know. I personally think we do a pretty good job being balanced, both of us, but that's fine. You know, it's a little hard to be not balanced when we're talking math quite often. Like it's
True.
a lot of times it's
Uh,
just math, but that's okay.
can the Suns cut Chris Paul? Who should
They
sign him?
can,
They
yeah,
can if they want to.
yeah. I mean, he's $30.8 million next year. 15.8 million of it's guaranteed. Who should sign him? I mean, he's not going to have any shortage of suitors if he wants to
Mm-hmm.
play, right? Some team will definitely sign Chris Paul to come in. If nothing else, Chris Paul can be your kind of what Kyle Lowry. I know he's out of the starting lineup now, but kind of what Kyle Lowry's been for the Heat, right? Your 24-minute a night caretaker, veteran point guard who just kind of knows what he's doing out there, and they could definitely see teams go in that direction. It would be kind of funny if he went, kind of back where it all not started, but if he went back to the Clippers, if they really needed somebody and he just kind of locked back in there, that'd be kind of funny. But I don't know. Let's see. I tend to think that's all maybe being a little overblown. I think that's we lost. He wasn't there. Let's get rid of him.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where
Well,
the feelings are coming from right now.
and right now, Suns fans are feeling the pain. And the
Yep.
first thing you want to do when you're in pain is it's like lash out, right? You got to
Yep.
do something. You have to right
You
now.
got to
We have to
change
fix
every.
this,
Yep.
right? And sometimes you can overcorrect.
Yep.
Steven, East Coast resident, no more late games.
I
I don't
don't
know.
know what that means, but sure.
He's asking no more late games. I mean, we have to, like, you've got the different time zones that you have to try to maximize. So there's naturally going to be some later games on the East Coast. That's just the way it's going to, because you can't have a game start at like 3 o'clock on a Monday in California. That's not going to work.
No. Yeah.
So that's
Yep.
that's why. And they try to balance it as much as they can. And there's no perfect solution.
Yeah. That said, I don't like they're playing the East Finals this year is at 8:30 every game. And it is a little like we couldn't have done 8 o'clock, but it's
Yeah.
fine. I don't know. I shouldn't complain as much. I don't have to get up at 5 in the morning anymore. I don't know why I get so angry about it still.
Speaking of this
Someone
is a
asked,
rough that asked, what is your background? They know that I was a teacher, but you're saying you don't have to get up at 5 in the morning anymore. What was your background?
oh, that's a good question. So I went to school to be a teacher too, and did not take that path. I worked for Disney for 20 years, right up until literally 3 weeks before Rudy Gobert shut the pandemic down. I left my career with Disney, my 20-year career there. I did a lot of stuff. I did work in the park. I worked on the steam train at Magic Kingdom once upon a time when I was a college kid as an internship. But I worked mostly in behind the scenes things, doing workforce analytics work and how many people should we hire, when should we hire them, what status is, all those things. And I did working for Disney's kind of what got me involved in contract stuff because I would do a lot of contract related things and had to learn of all. Disney has multitude of contracts with various unions and groups like that. So that's what I did for almost 20 years, both in Florida and California.
That's right. That's right. And that experience also helped you write up the plan that ultimately became the NBA's bubble at Disney World, which was pretty amazing.
Someone said, how do they reset the salary floor? Very simple. It's 90% of the cap. You have to get to 90% of the cap.
By the way, I've been talking to some of my teacher friends this week. Be nice to teachers. Everybody's always like thinking, oh, teachers have that summer off coming up and all of that. Yeah, but do you know what the last month of school is like?
Brutal.
The kids are awful the last month of school. Like it's like herding cats. Worse than, well, and my frame of reference is junior high, but still, oh my gosh, getting through every day is just an absolute battle this time of year. So be kind to teachers. Buy them alcohol that they can drink after school because they probably need it at this point.
Yeah.
Oh,
There was another question in here that I was gonna go. CBA still have the stretch provision. Yep.
Oh,
No
we saw that.
change with the stretch provision for sure. Um
Oh, Ricondo
uh
said, um, just being funny. You guys both do a good job.
for
I
sure.
can, can tell. Can't help but be biased sometimes. Yep, that's the way.
Yep.
That's just the way it goes.
That's yep. Yep. You take two kids who grew up on this stuff, and it's been a very long time that this has been ingrained in it. It's it's just good that we don't constantly come to virtual blows on here. So
That's right.
it's helped that neither of our teams have been very good at the exact same time in the last
Somebody commented that
7
earlier.
years.
Said if it's Lakers Celtics in the finals, is that the end of the show?
I'd like to think
I
no,
don't
but
think
who
so.
knows? I mean,
I don't think
yeah,
so.
probably not.
Keith and I will be friends no matter what happens. Even if the Celtics were to win and we live in that dark timeline, I would still be friends with Keith. It would be okay.
Yeah, yeah, I would
Um,
hope.
Kyle said, speaking of
Man,
TV, according to NBA League Pass, I live in the local Los Angeles market, but I'm 300 plus miles away in a different state. I can't be the only one for whom this is a problem. Any change coming, you think? That's
I,
rough.
yeah, this is not just an NBA thing. This is just U.S. broadcast rules where they've made certain things are available in certain markets only. And I get it, Kyle. I know a lot of people in this pain, and I know a lot of people who cut cord, right? And then they can't see the games when they're being played locally. So yeah, I'm hopeful this is something as everything continues to evolve and change that this will come. We did just see, I don't know, Trevor, if you saw this, but the Suns' decision to go to local TV was blocked
Oh, it
in court.
was. I didn't see
Yeah,
that.
so it's been blocked for now. It doesn't say that they're necessarily going to go, but Diamond Sports, which is the parent company of Bally Sports, for those who don't know what we're talking about, the Phoenix Suns announced that they were going to move all their games off of cable and put it on local over the air, and then they were going to create their own streaming product where people could buy that streaming product direct from the Suns. They'd still be part of League Pass and still national games, of course, but their local games are going to be on like ABC or CBS or whatever affiliate they picked in the area. But Bally Sports said that violates because they're currently in bankruptcy proceedings, and there's without getting too deep into the law part of it, there's a lot of stuff with bankruptcy proceedings where they have to protect the company, because bankruptcy doesn't mean you're trying to go out of business always, right? Sometimes it's a process to reset to stay. And what they're saying is they've hurt them by doing this and
Mm.
lessen their chances of staying in business. So it's just been blocked for now. We'll see where it goes. It's definitely something I think we're all going to be kind of keeping our eyes on.
Yeah, absolutely. Because things are still shifting in terms of our viewership habits and how we consume sports and all that. And we'll see how that all goes. Charles said, speaking of Lakers, how about bringing in a Showtime Award dedicated to the clutch or most highlights in the game? How about the Lakers end of the season team awards, MVP 6 minutes? I think you're thinking of the Lakers Nation post game show where we do the awards. That's probably what you're referencing. Where we do the superstar of the night, the star in your role. We do the master lock of the night. Yeah, maybe that's something that we'll add in as far as an award goes. But good thoughts, there.
Yeah.
Allie, do you guys watch Guardians of the Galaxy 3 yet? Sorry for non-basketball talk. Keith, you saw it.
Wow, that's never apologize for a Marvel question.
Yeah, right. My wife is traveling. She was traveling this week for her job, and she got her dad travels for work as well. And it just so happened they were in the same city at the same time. So they got to spend a couple days hanging out, and they actually went and saw it, much to my chagrin, but they went to go see it. And she said it was good, but she was really uncomfortable and had a hard time sitting through it because of the animal stuff in it. Which I
Yeah,
get.
I'm not. I don't want to do any spoilers because I know it's only been out like a week, and some people can't get to it. But if you love animals, it can be a very tough watch. Great movie though. Great,
Yeah.
best Marvel movie maybe since Endgame, pending.
Oh,
I really liked No Way Home quite a bit. Spider-Man No Way Home.
yes.
So it's in that range, right? It's that one, maybe No Way Home. Black Panther 2 is also very good. But I think it's way up there for me. It might be my favorite of the three Guardians movies. The first one's just
Mm,
hard to top because it was
it
just so
is.
goofy and fun. But yeah, there were parts where it was a very tough watch. It was easily the most violent
Yeah.
Marvel movie we've ever had, but excellent, man. I loved it. I loved every second of it, and I thought really really good. So, but I don't want to say anything more because I don't want anybody who hasn't had a chance to see it to
No spoilers. All right, let's finish this with this. Golden Eagle said, "How about the Suns getting a backup point guard for Chris Paul? Maybe Fred VanVleet." Now, I don't think Fred VanVleet would fit into the backup category, but
No,
Derrick
yeah,
Rose, Kobe White, would that be a way? Is if you can
that was
find, can
like
you
the
find
spectrum there,
right? Yeah.
guys. It's kind of funny.
Could you get would that be a way? Because your issue with Chris Paul is well, one of the issues is availability. If you get a high quality reserve behind him, is that enough to where the Suns can just say, well, all right, hey, we've got a guy like like kind of like Tyus Jones with Memphis. If you get somebody like that quality, does that solve the problem? And then you say, okay, let's just ride this thing out.
Yeah, right. You hope that would have been campaign, right? But he had his own
Yeah.
injury issues and then just didn't play quite as well. Not Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose is done. Like
No. Yeah. Yeah.
he doesn't have anything left. VanVleet far too expensive, and he's not doing that. Kobe White, sure, I guess. Probably restricted free agent, so it's going to be kind of hard to get involved on signing him too. So that becomes your challenge. I mean, the Suns are pretty expensive. They're not far away from being a super tax team themselves. So it's not like as it structured right now with their roster, it's not like they have a ton of flexibility to sign guys. So we'll see where they go. But yeah, I think that is a priority. Trying to upgrade campaign spot for sure. Maybe that may be one more of maybe you try to trade Landry Shamet to a team that's got an extra point guard and you can kind of rebalance that way. With that, but yeah, it's we'll see. I'm not so sure. That's priority number one, but it should be fairly high on the priority list.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it should be a priority if they decide they're going to keep Chris Paul. It's you have to have somebody you're really confident in behind him, or you move off of Chris Paul and you say, let's go get somebody else that's going to be our starting point guard. But we'll see where that ultimately goes.
Answer one more cap question if I can from Jimmy.
Yep.
It says if a player resigns on a 4-year deal, how soon can they be traded away without triggering a hard cap? That never triggers a hard cap. It's only acquiring a player via sign and trade that triggers a hard cap, or if you use your mid-level exception, or if you use the biannual exception. Anything else, you're absolutely good. So that doesn't trigger anything. As far as how soon can you trade them away, there's all sorts of trade restrictions that are. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time going into all of them right now, just because they are. There's a bunch of different lengths and times based on how much you signed the player for, when you signed them, all sorts of stuff with that. But yeah, it would basically be you can kind of do what you need to do if you want to trade them. Somebody said earlier, Trevor, somebody said happy birthday front office show.
I saw that.
I don't know.
Maybe is today. Maybe I set up the channel because I know we didn't launch the channel today.
Yeah. I don't know.
Maybe I set up the channel or something and it's showing up somewhere.
Well, if so, thanks.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah, Trevor's hat is nice. Justin DeLeon asked.
I have to give all the credit to Jeff Spiegel, who does our Dodgers coverage, but also does Lakers stuff as well. He had this hat, and I asked him. I said, Jeff, would it be like that hat is awesome? Would it be terrible if I went and bought my own version of that hat? And he said he was good with it. Now he got the snapback. I wound up getting the trucker version of it, but yes, this is one of my favorite hats now. It's
I don't even like the Lakers, and I like that hat. Sharp. So we'll take it.
Thank you.
Monte Morris to the Suns. Yeah, I kind of like that idea.
Sure.
Hey, Damon Lucky. We'll end on this. He says today's my birthday. Happy birthday, Damon.
Yep. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
There it is.
All right. Let's wrap things up there. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here for Front Office Friday. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. Don't forget to hit the like button over here on the YouTube channel and on the podcast feed. If you wouldn't mind, give us that 5-star rating and review over on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Getting close to that 25,000 subscribers. Appreciate it, everybody. Until next time. See ya and stay safe.